Welcome back to Hello Nigeria, and of course we are now joined by a very special guest. We do have with us Dr. Naya Ndupu, who is a consultant psychiatrist for Life Crest Consultancies, and also she's here today to speak to us on schizophrenia, the prevalence, the challenges, and what we all need to know. And as you already know, it is Mental Health Awareness Month as well. You're very welcome, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so when we hear schizophrenia, people think it's nothing that happens to Nigerians. You know, it's not prevalent in Nigeria. And so the first question will be, is it really prevalent in Nigeria? And what is schizophrenia?
It is. Many years ago, that was a general belief that schizophrenia is not something that happens in this climate. But we've had studies that show that a very comprehensive study was done, and it showed that it's as prevalent as what you have elsewhere. And the prevalence is said to be about 1% of the population would have schizophrenia in their lifetime. What that means is that at every point, you know, throughout someone's lifetime, you can say 1% of the population has. But sometimes when you do what they call a point prevalence, for point prevalence, at this point, and what is the percentage? It's between 2 to 5%.
Wow.
Yes.
That's extremely high.
Yes, that's quite high.
Yes. Now, is schizophrenia genetic, or is it developed through mental health illnesses? How does it come about?
Okay, maybe I should start with what really is schizophrenia.
Yes, please.
Schizophrenia is, I would call it a chronic mental illness. Chronic because there is no cure to it, but it can be managed. It's a mental health illness that affects the personality of a person, how they think, how they act. In a layman's language, schizophrenia makes people think they are unable to differentiate what is real and unreal. And what are the symptoms? They have more of delusions. We'll talk about that later. Hallucinations. Sometimes a change in personality. What are the causes? There are genetical causes of schizophrenia. We know that if I have a parent who has schizophrenia, one parent, the likelihood of having schizophrenia amongst the children is about 12 to 15%.
Wow.
If I have two parents, the father, the mom has schizophrenia, the likelihood increases to about 40%. So
Wow.
if you have an identical twin, Olivia, who has schizophrenia, your risk of having it as the other twin is almost 50%. That's 46%. So that's the genetics to it. There are biological causes. Biological causes include, we know from science that there are problems with the neurotransmitters, overactivities of what we call dopamine, overactivities of serotonin, glutamate is underactive. So there's a lot of chemical imbalance going on.
Can this be induced by any action on the part of the person who's suffering schizophrenia? Maybe by medication or drugs?
Yes.
Because
That's
we know
where
that there are dopamine boosters that people can take.
Yes, and that's the role of medications when it comes to management of this, because of the biological changes or imbalances that have gone wrong in the system.
Yeah.
But just like for every other mental illness, one factor is not enough. It's usually a combination of several factors. So you may already have a genetic predisposition. Then for some reasons, you have biological imbalances going on. And probably a third factor, which may be stress. Yes, for some people, factors that predispose them to schizophrenia, birth complications. So you can imagine, someone who had complications as a child many years ago, probably there was a complicated delivery, an infection when the mother was pregnant. That's already a risk factor for schizophrenia.
Wow.
Then when you get older, the stress, the other factors, even substance abuse could predispose you to schizophrenia.
Which is extremely prevalent in our society as well.
Particularly marijuana.
Yeah.
Amongst all the substances that may cause schizophrenia, marijuana has been found. And studies have shown us that people, the younger you are, when you start abusing marijuana, the risk of developing schizophrenia later in life is higher.
And studies have also shown that Nigeria is the third highest marijuana consuming country in the world. Now, at the same time, globally, it is said that only 3% of health budgets actually go towards mental health. And that is extremely dire. Now, let's take those global statistics, apply them to Nigeria. Why is it important for us to start pressurizing the government and particularly the health ministry to actually open up their budget when it comes to mental health? And what are the implicated costs of schizophrenia?
Like for other mental health illnesses, over time, if you understand the way schizophrenia works, the effect on the individual, because of the symptoms, over time there's a decline in functioning. There's reduced productivity. You see people who have schizophrenia, depending on when, we'll talk about the age when it happens, depending on the age you are being affected by the symptoms of schizophrenia, there's a downwards movement. So you may have risen up the ladder, and after a while, you begin to drift lower. You're functioning, you're not doing well. I have seen people who have gotten up to PhD, then they develop schizophrenia, and they begin to go down. So everything, there's reduced productivity, there's loss of income, they stop functioning as years go by as a result of the illness. So even when we manage that, we know that it's important that beyond the symptoms abating, you need to help these people recover, knowing that if you leave them that way, they will decline over time.
Now, because you mentioned an example of someone getting to PhD and then experiencing schizophrenia, let's talk about some of the myths that surround schizophrenia. One particular one would be that I've heard people say, if you read too much book, you find out that at some point you start to run, you start to have a multiple personality, you start having issues.
Schizophrenia is not multiple personality.
Okay, yes, I was also going to ask, is it the same thing as multiple personality? So what's the difference?
Schizophrenia, multiple personality is what in mental health we call a dissociative disorder.
ADD?
No,
ADHD?
No, dissociative.
Oh.
Yes, that's a different thing entirely. It has to do with a type of amnesia disorder where this minute I know what I'm doing, I'm in full control of what I'm doing. The next year, 1 hour later, I don't seem to even recollect I was here. That's a different condition entirely.
Wow.
Unlike schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, people know. A lot of times we find out that people make that mistake and keep saying multiple. No, they are completely two different things. Unlike schizophrenia, where the pattern is clear, is a psychotic illness. Multiple personality may not necessarily be a psychotic illness. You may just find out that this person loses memory of a part of their life at a certain time, but they may not be clearly psychotic, unlike what you see. And then in schizophrenia, you have your delusions, your hallucinations, which you may not have in split personality. So
all right. So we'll come back to our myths now surrounding schizophrenia.
Yes.
Can putting a lot of pressure academically on the brain lead to schizophrenia? What are some of the other myths that surround it?
No, it can't lead to schizophrenia. It's just because a lot of times what people do not understand, they try to attribute other factors to it. Nothing. There are no studies to that. I can understand to an extent why people say that, because we see, depending, there are different types of schizophrenia. There are about 6, 7 types. Depending on the symptom, you find out that some of them may just be preoccupied with books. They appear to be reading, they appear to be writing. That may just be all the person is doing, but if you look closely, there's a lot of jargons, because a lot of things are not well organized in their thinking pattern. It reflects in what they're writing. So people tend to interpret it as that. Another myth about schizophrenia, it's people, which is a general myth with mental illness, is that people believe that it's spiritual. There's a spiritual undertone to it. People fail to appreciate when they see people with unusual behavior. You talk to yourself. And that's where there's a bit of complication. People go to church, they get all spiritual, they say they're speaking in tongues sometimes. It takes a few men of God, pastors, who are knowledgeable to know, no, this is not it. There's something out of this, So you can find people in church who get all spiritual. They may be hallucinating. They're hearing and seeing things in clear consciousness. They may be really deluded in whatever team. You feel you are God, you feel someone, the very common one we see, you are paranoid. Everyone is after me. People want to harm me. People want to kill me. It's very few people who are able to recognize it. But because of cultural reason, we tend to believe these things and nobody probes. to say, really, who is after you? Why is this happening? So people then have this myth that if someone is thinking this way, oh, okay, there's a spiritual problem, which is why we go to churches. Yes, and nobody sits down and wonder.
And it's honestly a shame. What are the early signs and symptoms of schizophrenia?
Okay, for schizophrenia, it affects men and women equally, but the difference is that men, the onset is earlier. For men, you find it happening in the early 20s. For women, late 20s and 30s, the first onset. What are the symptoms? Symptoms could be disorganized thinking pattern. I'm sure we all come across people who they derail when they talk. You don't understand the way they think. I've had clients who are a bit very mystical in their thinking. I'm sure you've heard people talk about aliens, talk about conspiracy theories, FBI's after me, people monitoring me. You just notice that there's something wrong in their thinking pattern. That's a classical symptom of schizophrenia, what we call thought disorder. Sometimes people tell you that my thoughts are spoken out aloud. I'm thinking, and I feel others can hear what I'm thinking without speaking. That's like thought broadcast. Or people tell you that these thoughts, what I think are not my thoughts, someone is putting them in me. There's a lot of manipulation with their thoughts. That may be a symptom. Then we talk about that's having to do with the thought disorder. Then we could talk about the hallucinations. It could be in any modality. I'm hearing, and how come I'm the only one who is hearing people talk in my head? Or sometimes people tell you that I see things no other person can see. Or even taste. I've had clients I've managed who the major symptom I saw was that they just had this funny taste in their mouth all the time. Or they had this smell, something they only could perceive. So hallucination could happen in any of your 5 organs. It could even be your skin. If you've seen some people, somebody was just telling me of an incident where someone said there were insects dropping from her hair. So she had to keep spraying insecticide all the time on her hair. That's most likely hallucination.
And there's several variations to this, several degrees. But is there help is a major question.
There is help. There is help. Usually we know that the earlier you present, the better the outcome. There is help. Majority of people who have schizophrenia, if they present early, the prognosis is good. There's drug treatments. Beyond the drug treatment, there's a cognitive treatment for them. There's psychotherapy, which they get. So while you're tackling the chemical imbalances going on with medications, there's a place of the talk therapy. You're now putting this person through how they can rebuild their lives.
Okay. What are the cost implications?
The cost implication. It's quite high in this part of the world for obvious reasons. There's little investment from the government as regards mental health. A lot of people you're expected to do out-of-pocket payments. Insurances do not cover mental health. So it's quite expensive having to treat these people. And then the number of people who have mental illnesses and schizophrenia are increasing by the day. That's enough to put anyone off for sickness.
At least the good news is that all hope isn't lost. There's help for this.
There is help. If people are aware.
How can they contact you?
Oh, okay. If you need to reach me, you could reach me on my emails. You could reach me on Twitter, Dr. Naya Ndupu.
Okay.
On Twitter, you could reach me on my emails, Naya Ndupu, Gmail, or yahoo.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
There's several questions I want to ask you, but time and space will not permit me to. Of course, we'll definitely be having her here again with us on Hello Night.
To enjoy more of these our Ogbonge videos when you just watch, press this button to subscribe on top of our YouTube page. You go love her.